like a rubber band stretched pale, threatening to snap in half to the slightest breeze of wind. That's how I felt for as long as I can remember. At times, the mental tension shuffled around in the background of my inner monologue. At times, it took center stage with undeniable force. But for as long as I can remember, I always felt like I'm a couple of pushes away from a nervous breakdown. There wasn't anything specific that I was worried about. I mean, yeah, sure, I could find things to explain away the stress. My social life, big milestones, whatever was on the news that day, but there was never any resolution. There was never any connection. Whatever I was terrified of rested so deep in my self-conscious abyss that it was impervious to rationalization. When I was younger, I bridged the gap between who I felt like and who I wanted to be with liquor. I'd grab my first drink at a house party, or at a bar, or a club, or my living room, and that feeling of impending doom would leave me. For a while, at least. Then I'd wake up on a couch, or in someone's bed, or a bus, or my living room floor, and the certainty of an incoming apocalypse would be back tenfold. Something horribly vague, but something was going to go wrong. Something bad was happening, and I wasn't prepared. A couple of years after university, when it stopped being fashionable to be drunk on a weekday, my alcoholic coping mechanisms mutated into a twisted need for affection. I was a mess. I knew that. Drinking to suppress that knowledge was no longer sustainable. Yet undeniable knowledge is easily diluted in a crowd of differing opinions. I found that if I could trick someone into believing that I'm normal, if I could morph my mannerisms to be calm and relaxed, I would start to believe the lie myself. If they fell in love with me, that passing thought would harden into absolute certainty. Pure bliss. A strained rubber band gone limp. Yet no high, even those produced by the endocrine glands, last forever. After a week or two, something would always start to feel off. Something was wrong. That period of bliss shortened each time I reached for it again. The well of calm in strangers' laps was running low. Eventually it went dry. I've tried talking to a priest. I've done charity work. I've backpacked through India. I drank ayahuasca and experimented with loads of other drugs. Nothing has helped. The past 32 years of my life has existed under a strain of a vague sense of distress. I've managed to survive in the shadow of that unspeakable uneasiness, but it hasn't been pleasant. This year, I decided I would do something about it. I spent the first couple of weeks of January doing online self-help questionnaires and most of February doing therapy over Zoom. No amount of examination made that feeling dissipate. No amount of self-reflection could obscure that ever-present darkness. I walked away from my online counselor with some breathing exercises, a recommendation for melatonin tablets, and a discount voucher if I ever wanted to come back. It's March now. I'm still not willing to give up. I get off at Prague's main railway station and descend underground to the metro. The carriage smells like burnt rubber and it's far too crowded, and a group of teenagers get into a fistfight within spitting distance of me. It's not a pleasant ride. But then again, me and the underground have never gotten along. The darkness of the tunnels, the tight squeeze beneath the mother of all city, the speed, it's not a place for someone who's not at peace. By the time we reach the edge of the city, the carriage is nearly empty. The dread doesn't pass with the crowds. The dread stays exactly where it's always been. Outside of the subway, rain beats down on the world like it's trying to cleanse it. I find refuge in a nearby pub and get myself a beer. It tastes good, and a part of me wants more of it, but my stomach protests. I'm far too nervous to drink. I'm far too nervous to do anything. For a while, I keep the glass company and watch the waves of rain wash over the cement panel housing. I find myself wondering whether I'm trying to wait out the weather or whether I'm trying to avoid the final leg of my journey. The skies look apocalyptic and show no signs of improving. I take one final sip of beer, put my jacket over my head, and face down the elements. Shrunken with age, they greet me at the door. It's only been a couple of Christmases, but time seems to have passed much faster in my childhood home. My mum has trouble walking, but she shoos me out of the kitchen when I try to help her with coffee. They both seem happy to see me. For a while we talked about nothing in particular. My mother catches me up on where all my cousins ended up, and my father shares some of his recent political opinions with me. I go through the motions of talking about work and life and why I'm not having children yet, and then, when the conversation starts to drag, and my father is about to turn on the television, I ask whether I've always been broken. I try to explain myself, but words have always escaped me when I try to speak of the dread. I ask if I've always been nervous, whether there wasn't a time that I was constantly worried. My mother suggests that maybe it's the barometer pressure from the storm. Maybe that's why I'm not doing well at this particular moment. I tell her it's not the case of the weather. I tell her I don't know where the feeling came from, but that I felt it for as long as I can remember. My father says I was still normal at his brother's wedding when I was 8. His use of the word normal gets a glare from my mother, but I've lived under the same roof with them for 20 years. She concedes. My condition is not normal. She hobbles over to my old bedroom while saying something about a tape of the wedding. I follow her to the threshold of the room, and then I stop. The place where I used to sleep. It looks like a memorial for a child that died young. All of the posters that I put up in my final years under my parents' roof have been torn down and replaced with a never-ending collection of crayon drawings. Most of them are of Pokemon concepts straight from the mind of an unoriginal child. But there's a particular drawing of an angry-looking egg creature that tugs at my attention. She opens up the closet. The top shelf is filled with clothes that I can never wear again. The rest of the space is taken up by slabs of black plastic in thin cardboard sleeves. My mother's shaking fingers run across a collection of VHS tapes, as if she was a librarian searching for an ancient tome. I try to make sense of the crude drawing of the egg creature above my bed, yet before I do, she ushers me out of the room. Not a single electronic device has ever been unplugged from my parents' television. In a wobbling tower of plastic and dust, a collection of DVD players and dormant internet modems rest. She plugs in the tape into the VCR without a hint of hesitation. We watch the recording of the wedding. My father makes off-color jokes about his brother and the eventful divorce. My mother comments on weight and dresses of those in attendance, and she is the first one to spot the child when it appears on the dance floor. A miniature boy in a miniature suit twisting his body offbeat to a Spice Girls song. The kid was smiling and having a blast. He looked nothing like me, but I knew somewhere out there in the murky realm of the fourth dimension, there was a singular thread of time that connected the two of us into one. The dancing child eases the mood of the room, but once the tape ends, once the television is turned off, once that brief respite from the sense of doom leaves me, I ask questions about my childhood. No obvious traumatic events present themselves. I ask about the specific members of the family, whether they could have done something to me. The thought of my disposition being a product of abuse was always purely hypothetical to me. I never had any proper suspicions. I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure, but each name I ask carries within it an implied accusation. Doubt fills the room and makes the air unbreathable. I stop asking questions. They sit in silence. My mother mentions a segment of the news she saw about horse therapy at the Messianic Psychiatric Institute. Apparently it's really helpful for people who are stressed out. She asked if I wanted her to call them and check if there are any available spots. As I tell her I'm old enough to make my own appointments, my father switches off the television. We don't dwell into my feelings of doom. Instead, we watch a spaghetti western. None of those horses look comfortable. My mother shuffles off to bed, and eventually so do I. My father stays up and watches an Austrian show about a crime-solving dog. When the television goes quiet, I am still awake. Surrounded by drawings made by 6-year-old me, I feel desperately old. I feel like I'm running out of time. I feel like something bad will happen soon, and I will be responsible for it. The scribble of the egg creature scowls at me from the wall, but I refuse to meet its gaze. Instead, I look at the poorly drawn Pokemon and try to remember a single episode of the Saturday morning cartoon. In my adult state, the hours upon hours of Pokemon I consumed as a child feel like a fever dream. The only thing that I distinctly remember is that our television caught an Austrian channel that plays the episodes in German 3 weeks in advance. I would tape those episodes, study them, learn the basic plot points, and then, when Saturday morning rolled around, I would call up my cousin and tell him the entire plot before it happened. Maybe it was a joke and I just wanted to irritate him. Maybe I needed him to know that I was able to see things ahead of time. That part of my life sits beneath a thick fog that I cannot cut through. My breathing speeds up again and I realize I can no longer stay still. I sit up. The egg creature stares at me from the wall. I start feeling dizzy. Each breath seems to be drawing at a finite pull of strength in my chest. I stand up. The egg creature's foot is defiantly raised, prepared for a stomp. Its limbs are stubby, but they are disquietingly muscular. I can't breathe. I look into the egg creature's manic eyes, and I can't breathe. As if my life depended on it, I leap at my wall and I tear down the horrible drawing. I almost rip it apart, but then I remember I don't live in this room anymore. The storm outside has long passed. All I can hear is the dripping of rain gutters and my parents snoring from the other room. I resist the urge for destruction and fold up the drawing. I place it in the wardrobe, right by the VHS tapes. My breath returns, but the panic doesn't subside. My chest tightens, and my head immediately starts rattling off heart attack symptoms. 2 weeks ago, a doctor told me I was perfectly fine. I remind myself this wouldn't be the first false alarm. Something still feels bad. I've got to grab a glass of water to calm my nerves, but on my way, I see a sight that agitates them once more. My father left the door open on his way to the bedroom. My parents have stopped snoring. Sprawled out on their backs, they look like undignified corpses. I linger in the doorway, clutching both my breath in the glass of water, until my father scratches his face. Wanting to avoid the visage of dead parents in my dreams, I don't go to sleep. Instead, I turn on my bedside lamp and go through my closet of tapes. A couple of the tapes carried my mother's neat handwriting in green pen. John's wedding, 96, October. Trip to Thailand, 01, June. Joseph's 80th. 03. April. Most of the tapes, however, were labelled in crayon by a hand incapable of fine motor control. Pokemon 1 + 2 + 3 +. Pokemon 1, 2 and 3. Pokemon Squirtle. Pikmunk 1. Pokemon 1 + 2 + 3 +. The undecipherable organisation of the tapes provided some respite. For a moment, I tried to put myself in that kid's shoes, to remember what it's like to feel the need to hoard episodes of cartoons. For a moment, I find myself reconnecting with that little boy. A smile crossed my lips. It didn't last long. Bad warning. Sweat starts to gather around my hairline. My teeth clench without my input. Scratched out in the red crayon, the title of the tape faces me down. Bad warning. The black plastic of the VHS tape seems darker than that of the rest. Something feels patently wrong with the tape. A sudden burst of fear rushes through my veins. I almost slam the door of the closet, but I stop myself. I am terrified of the tape, but the fear is tangible. I am scared of the tape because it's about the bad thing. That sense of vague doom that has followed me for so long. It's been distilled and melted down into a single brick of black plastic. Holding it makes me feel ill. I want to smash it on the ground and throw its wreckage out of the window. But I don't. I know I'm far too close to finding out what's wrong with me. I know I'm far too close to finding out what's wrong with me to turn back. Bad warning. I slide the tape into the dusty Tower of Babel and watch the television. A hallway of a decrepit building flickers on the screen. In the center of the frame floats a dirty pillowcase with black marbles for eyes and a drawn-on crooked grin.
Hey there, children.
The effigy has limbs of thick yellow rope, and even though no puppeteer or a string are visible, it shakes wildly with every word.
My name is Professor Egghead, and I'm here to teach you how to be safe.
The camera is ripped out of the tripod with a loud fumble and starts to move across the abandoned hallway. The pillowcase follows, dragging its stringed feet through broken glass and rubble.
The first lesson we will learn today is about cars.
The puppet comes to a swaying stop at a piece of graffiti. On the crumbling wall, as if scratched out by a desperate cave dweller, sits a picture of a car.
When crossing the street, make sure to look both ways. Otherwise, something
bad
might happen. It's a
dangerous
world out there, children. And if we're not,
vigilant
then we might.
die.
The creature shivers, and its scribbled mouth crumples into a long, drawn-out wheeze. It takes me a moment to notice that the creature is dragging its feet across the hallway again. I'm far too focused on its eyes. Like fickle drops of mercury, the puppet's eyes shiver. The black of the marble thins down into a bloodshot red. A misshapen iris festers up in the center of each eye. With a tear, the pillowcase splits apart to reveal sharp, needle-like teeth.
The second lesson we will learn today is about trust. Never trust a stranger. Never.
On the wall, there is a carved-out picture of a man in a trench coat. The string of the puppet's arm lifts up to point to it. The arm is no longer yellow. It is the color of sickly skin.
Never trust anyone.
The creature screamed, baring its razor teeth.
If you trust a stranger, they might murder
You.
they might torture you. Or they might be a sexualoid and want to do bad things to you. Never trust anyone. Do not trust strangers. Do not trust the police. Do not trust your parents. Only trust me, Professor Egghead.
Like plump snail's eyes, the puppet's limbs start to react into its body. The pillowcase starts to morph as well, bloating up as if it was a filthy balloon made of cloth. Soon enough, any memory of the strange puppet is stifled beneath a demented metamorphosis. Staring at me from the television is a lifelike rendition of the manic egg creature folded up in my closet.
I am Professor Egghead, commander of knowledge, dominator of wisdom. If you do not listen to my final safety lesson, children, you will suffer for all eternity in indescribable pain.
The puppet finishes its transformation into a creature of flesh and spit and spite. With a swift kick, Professor Egghead knocks down a weathered wooden door. The camera refuses to enter the wooden door. This visibly frustrates the egg creature.
How are the children to learn their lesson if they do not witness the horror? How am I supposed to keep the children safe if their eyes do not gaze upon the filth?
With sharp stomps punctuating the creature's screams, the cameraman is convinced. With a visible shake, the camera moves past the door frame and focuses on the Egghead.
Our final lesson today is going to be something you'll have to remember for a long time. It's going to be something you'll have to repeat to yourself over and over as you go to sleep. It's the most important lesson you will ever learn.
Without warning, the Egghead seizes the camera and pries it away. His fat fingers rest on the edge of the frames. His hot breath fogs up the lens. Yet his bloodshot eyes transgress the camera and stares deep into my soul.
You're in danger, children, and so is everyone else around you. Everyone is going to suffer. Everyone is going to suffer, and only I can help. Only Professor Egghead can keep you safe. When the time comes, I will hold you like a friend. But until then...
The Egghead runs his thumb across the lens, clearing the fog. His mouth drips spit, and his hands shake as he gets a better handle on the camera.
Until then, you must see the danger. You must witness the creature that will destroy us all. You must understand what you must fear.
The camera shifts over to the corner of the room. I see it. I see that horrible thing. That unearthly pile of flesh and blood and bone. The thing stirs and shifts as if it was aware it is being watched. Within its long bloody tendrils, there is a heart. That heart shines in a sickly yellow glow with each sluggish beat.
It will grow. It will grow. It will consume all. Know it. Remember it. Fear it. Fear it and pray that when the day finally comes, I will be there to save you. Fear it and hope that...
I shut off the television. I shut off the television and lay down on the floor. My chest heaves in terror. The tangled eldritch mass is no longer on the screen, but I can still see it. Strands of coiled beating flesh consume my mind entirely and make me heave. I turn over to my stomach and crawl on all fours to the bathroom through the darkness. I puke out the glass of water and any semblance of the concept of time. There is barely enough space in front of the toilet for me to curl up. but I do. Surrounded by walls, I hold myself unshaken and pray that the afterburn of that horrid nightmare will leave me soon. It doesn't. The terror refuses to let go of my heart, but as the cold sweat on my face becomes frigid, the fear is overtaken by a horrid exhaustion. I barely manage to climb up to my knees. Crawling into my childhood bed feels like entering a casket. Beneath the fog of approaching sleep, I can still see it. I can still see that horrible, squirming nightmare.
You should be scared.
I shut my eyes as hard as I can. I try to pretend I can't feel the mattress shifting by my feet.
Feel the fear. Understand its source. Surrender to it.
The stench of phosphorus snakes its way into my nostril. The bed shifts again. A heavy burden moves across my chest in crude, shuffling steps.
Surrender to the fear and pray to the gods of science that the professor will be here to rescue you when the day of judgment comes.
He stands above me. He's unavoidable. He stares into my eyes.
Do not attempt to ignore me, child. I am your savior. I am Professor Egghead, the scientific mind which keeps humanity from the brink of disaster. I will get the respect I demand. No one can deny the company of Professor Egghead.
He stomps. My eyes can no longer stay closed. The moment I meet his mad, burning gaze, I scream. I scream loud enough to wake my parents and have them rush into the room. They stand above my bed, shrunken with age, trying to comprehend what happened to their son. I lack the words to express myself. I simply weep. I weep, and from across the room, Professor Egghead watches me with an excited grin. They're old, and they're tired, and they're scared. I tell them to go to sleep. I tell them I'm fine. I tell them I'm fine, and then, under Professor Egghead's watchful eye, I look up the website for the Messianic Psychiatric Institute. The rubber band has snapped.